What are these comics? So, Scott Pilgrim is a series of graphic novels by Brian Lee O'Malley. The books follow the titular 23-year-old Scott Pilgrim as he fights 7 evil exes in the pursuit of the girl of his dreams, Ramona Flowers. Their series is made up of 6 volumes published between August 2004 and July 2010, and oh boy, it sure has aged. I've been passively interested in Scott Pilgrim for a few months now, well, a while, ever since that one audio on TikTok went viral and I thought Scott was a lesbian. So when I got some free time from school, I was like, okay, let's get into this. I'm gonna become a Scott Pilgrim fan, a Scotty as it were. I was like, let's stop procrastinating, you know? So as soon as I started reading the first volume, I was like, oh, this book is fun. The drawings are seemingly really real and honest depictions of what Toronto is like. And the character designs are cute. I like the tale of a man-child who thinks he can and do no wrong and is trapped inside his youth, becoming a real adult and a decent human being. But despite all this, the books contain just a lot of general grossness. Like, y'all cast Michael Cera to play this freak? Dang. I've written the script a lot of times with a lot of different, thesis statements, but honestly, I'm just gonna unpack all my problems with these comics Sarah Z style. Taylor Swift said haters gonna hate, and I'm a hater for real. So let's just get right into it. At the beginning of the series, Scott is dating 17-year-old Chinese-Canadian Catholic school student Knives Chow. This relationship is legal in Canada, but it's also not legal in my heart. It's evident that nothing really sexual or that serious is happening between them, but Scott, as a 23-year-old man, should really know not to date someone 5 years younger than him. But Scott never really realizes what he's done. It's not even the not really sexual, not really romantic relationship that they have that's concerning. Scott exploits the quote-unquote dating a minor to make himself feel better about his previous breakup, and in the aftermath leaves her completely obsessed with him, because he's not mature enough to have a relationship with someone significantly younger than him. Defenders of this aspect of the comics will point out how several characters tell Scott how fucking his relationship is. Kim wonders if Scott is evil, and Scott's sister Stacy seems genuinely concerned about him. But this either means that Kim and Stacy understand how messed up that is and Scott doesn't, or it's a lazy attempt at lampshading something that is genuinely really messed up. Scott pulls all this shit and it's never really confronted. Like, we had to breeze past all that. Scott takes his child girlfriend to band rehearsal, and before the door is open to them, Scott asks her to be good. And we're just okay with that? And I'm not trying to come off as some holier-than-thou moralist who thinks that everything every character does should be good, and that the non-good things should always be explicitly shown as bad. Scott clearly isn't supposed to be a good person, especially towards the beginning of the series. But this is one of the least acknowledged parts of his crappiness. A lot of people in the fandom, ship them together, which I haven't watched the movie, so maybe it's different than with the context of the comics. I find really awful. The text shows how he's weird about his exes and how he's an unreliable narrator and how he's NEET. But the fact that he's a groomer gets skipped somehow. On a meta level, the readers are supposed to understand that this is just the beginning of Scott's character development journey. But I don't think that Scott ever really realizes that his relationship with Knives Chow was just bad. Not plain old Scott Pilgrim bad, but genuinely kind of evil. If we're expected to come to root for Scott, and we're expected to believe that he starts becoming a good person towards the end of the series, he should actually understand the wrongness of his actions. If not for morality or ethics, then because it's kind of lazy to not write that part in. It would be so much more narratively satisfying, for me at least, if that was something that was addressed, instead of just a loose thread in the plot. Like in the last volume, Scott learns that Knives isn't in high school anymore and wants to make out with her. Knives cries and tells Scott that he'll always be her Clash It demon head. Nothing changes. What was the point, even? One of the main recurring features of the novels was how Scott was a nice guy. He's such a nice guy. And considering the fact that basically a minute ago I was just tearing him to shreds, one may be wondering exactly what that means. Basically, in certain online spaces, a nice guy is a man who believes that if they're nice and decent to women, if they do the bare minimum, that women owe them sexual or romantic relationships. This mindset is characterized by the belief that women tend to go for shitty hot guys instead of normal-looking good guys. Nice guys finish last, if you will. It's pretty dehumanizing towards women because it makes it so you should only be nice to women if they'll owe you something. Nice guys suck, and Scott is an interesting nice guy fantasy where the big titty alt girl will want you, even if you're an irresponsible loser who doesn't know shit about her, just because you're nice. Maybe she's gone for hot bad boys in the past, like Todd or the Katayanagi twins, but you're an exception. You are nice. In the first volume, Scott orders something from Amazon because he knows Ramona, an Amazon delivery worker, would come to deliver it to his house. When she appears, he tries to ask her out, and when she shows signs of disinterest, Scott is like, "Well, I'm so sincere," and manages to win her over. Later on in the same volume, after Scott and Ramona hang out, she just ends up making out with him for no apparent reason. This isn't a condemnation of women that make out with random guys for no reason in real life, but on a meta level, it is just showing guys that all they have to do to get alt girls to like them is be nice and soft. But from what we know of Ramona at this point, she has absolutely no reason to be attracted to Scott. Scott ordered something from the place she works just to see her. Scott has been asking around town just to find random information about her. Realistically, she should think Scott is a weird stalker man. Because he kind of is. But in the narrative of the books, she thinks Scott is sore heart. Because that's just what jobless loser creeps want to believe. And to me personally, it just seems like wish fulfillment, which there's a lot of in this series. Like the thing with Knives. In the 6th volume, Scott bumps into Knives and asks to have casual sex with her. Knives does this entire girl boss speech about how she doesn't want him anymore and stuff, and then says they can make out for a bit. And even though the making out was awful, that no shade to women who would do this in real life, I know people aren't always consistent, makes no sense in the context of her character at this point. The only reason in the narrative for her to act like that would be because Scott is capital S, capital P, Scott Pilgrim, and all the girls love him, even though they really don't have any reason to, because he's Scott Pilgrim. Okay, so all these next problems can be deflected away with it was a different time. And yeah, to an extent, it was a different time. I feel like all the critiques I presented before were equally as fucked up in the late 2000s as they are now. But these things, sure they're fucked up, but they probably weren't perceived as such by people during the time period in which these books take place and were published. Which is why I will concede I'm not trying to hashtag cancel the Scott Pilgrim comics for something that there's no way they could have known was wrong. I took 8th grade social studies. I know that placing present-day ideas into events and art of the past can be bad and controversial, and but we in 2023 aren't reading these comics in the context they were published in. We're reading them in 2023, and any issues I take with the postmodern neo-Marxist politically correct wokeness, or apparent lack thereof, in this book is worth examining. Okay? Okay, so the Scott Pilgrim comics are kind of ableist. Like, they said the R slur like 5,000 times. I couldn't be bothered to go back and count them all. Like, I tried. The R slur, in case you don't know, is this word. And if you don't know why that's bad, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not a part of the neurodivergent community, so I can't really comment from personal experience or anything like that. But I'll try to explain it as best as I can. The R slur is a pejorative term that is hurled at people who, according to Wikipedia, people who are considered stupid, slow to understand, or ineffective in some way. And also, neurodivergent people. This is bad because it equates being stupid, slow to understand, all those things, with being neurodivergent, which perpetuates the belief that all neurodivergent people are those things, and all people who are those things are neurodivergent. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, by the way. The R slur is a slur, and like many slurs, it evolved in usage and acceptability throughout the times. Nowadays, the R slur is still commonly said. In Discord servers, in group chats, in high school hallways, but awareness that it's bad to say the R slur is increasing rapidly, even if the amount of people who don't say it aren't. And I'm not saying there weren't people who knew and thought saying the R word was bad in the 2000s. I'm saying those people weren't really seen or heard as much as people who thought it was fine. There was no woke mob to censor the Scott Pilgrim comics, unfortunately. Oh, and another thing. Scott seems to love to fetishize women who love women. If you don't know, to fetishize means to make something the object of a sexual fetish. Men who are attracted to women typically do this to women who engage in adult activities with other women, let's just say. This is bad because it removes agency from women, it objectifies and dehumanizes them, and perpetuates, oh my god, I keep saying perpetuates, last time I promise, perpetuates the belief that women are attracted to each other for the attention of men, and not just for the sake of being attracted to each other. And I probably just did an awful job of explaining it. But what I mean is, whenever a guy thinks it's hot when two girls, like, make out or do stuff together, it detaches personhood from them in that context. It's fetishization. In the fourth volume especially, this happens a whole lot. Like, in the fourth volume, Knives and Kim are both drunk, and Knives says, "Kim, I've kissed the lips that have kissed yours." And Scott walks by and sees them making out. He does the decent thing, walks away, and resolves to never mention this incident. So I'm not saying this is an incident of the character fetishizing Kim and Knives. I'm sure in the real world, if real world Knives and real world Kim were drunk and in this situation, they would have made out. However, as I'm sure a lot of people know, fiction is a thing that is pretty separate from reality. Why did we have to see Kim and Knives making out? I don't get it. It's not relevant to the plot at all going forward. It doesn't really reveal anything about either of these characters involved that we can reflect on going forward. So the only real reason that I can personally see for the inclusion of this scene would be to show us something hot, something smexy, which can be fine in certain contexts, but feels entirely out of place in a comic like this. All other instances of characters engaging in intimate physical actions move the plot along or tell us something about the characters involved. Kim kisses Scott in Volume 6 to show he cares about him. Ramona makes out with Scott to show he's attracted to him, which establishes the relationship that the entire series is based on. Wallace sleeps with that dude to show he's gay and to show him having a relationship. Kim and Knives' little thing has no reason whatsoever to be there except to show how sexy they are. Later, he asks Ramona if she's ever kissed a girl, and when she says yes, he oh my god, he shudders with pleasure. Excuse me, babes, what's going on right now? In addition to this, one of Ramona's infamous 7 evil exes is a girl! Upon learning this, Scott is understandably shocked. If I had wrongly assumed someone exclusively dated one gender for their entire life and it was proven wrong, I would probably be a little surprised too. That's not the bit I'm calling out here. What I'm saying is, Scott exclaims, "You had a sexy face?" I hope I don't have to explain why this is wrong too much. But basically, it's reducing Ramona's relationship to Roxanne Richter, which could have been any amount of meaningful or emotional or deep, into just being sexy, which is gross. And also a textbook example of WLW fetishization. What more is there to say? So, I know I just spent, like, however many minutes just absolutely shitting on Scott Pilgrim graphic novels. I actually really like them, and I'm glad that I read them. It's another hole filled in my uncultured brain. Despite the qualms I have with them, I have no regrets about reading them. I think that with all the disclaimers I presented in this video about, like, ableism and fetishization and stuff, I would definitely recommend this series, and I'm gonna keep enjoying this franchise. And I'm definitely not saying that you're a bad person if you enjoy this series, because it's pretty good. It has a certain je ne sais quoi, as my French teacher would say. I just gotta go watch the movie now.